To be our best, we need to stay up to date on the latest and greatest. That includes being equipped with prime tools and gear. That's where ShieldBox comes in. It's a monthly subscription box designed specifically for law enforcement professionals. Each month, you'll get a curated box of duty gear and supplies from industry leaders. Sign up today at theshieldbox.com and use code BLUEGRIT to save $10 on your first box.
I've only seen my dad cry one time in my life. Not when his parents passed away, not when, any of these other, kind of losses or tragedies happened throughout their life, but when I was leaving for my first deployment. You go under and raise your hand for mental health, there's a potential you could lose your career. We're attempting to break that stigma. Understanding the kind of balancing act of it, of where, hey, is this going to do more detriment to me personally if I continue doing this work?
Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric. Today I'm joined by Mark Messina. He's also repping QRFUP. So you've seen them on my social. We've collaborated quite a bit. But Mark, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to connect with Mark a little bit and then pop up on your show, the Gray Zone podcast. But we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to be talking about QRFUP, of course, the app and the effort and the project, and we'll get into that. We're going to be talking about military service, your call to service in your military career a bit. And then we're going to talk about the bigger conversation today, which is mental health support, suicide prevention and awareness for veterans, first responders. And that's where we come back to QRFUP and the mission there. So Mark, could you just please, one, thanks for coming on the show, man, and spreading the word and your work through those efforts. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course, man. So yeah, guys, I spent just shy of 15 years in the military. I was medically retired. I got out, on an early medical retirement, and that's kind of something that ties into QRFUP. We'll get into that in a second. But no, guys, I did. I joined in. I came into the infantry. I hopped into the 82nd Airborne. I spent, almost 8, 9 years, 10 years, something like that, out on Fort Bragg. And I did some platoon sergeant time out in Carson, and then I finished out the last couple of years out in SFA. So I kind of bounced all over the place, and I was able to get a lot of schools and education and different things throughout my career with multiple deployments overseas. It's Florida Global War on Terror, and it kind of culminated at the end to where I had to raise my hand and ask for help, right? Which is the kind of the big push of why I ended up coming into QRFUP and doing those different things. We started rowing, and I raised my hand and said, "Hey guys, like I'm having panic attacks in my shower, having some of these other issues, right? That PTSD and TBI related, and it ended up costing me my career. So, and that's kind of where it ended for me. Which is a big reason and push why I joined the organizations I did.
Yeah, absolutely. What was in the beginning that drew you towards the military?
Oh, man. So the military for me was kind of a rite of passage, right? I am fourth generation military. My great grandfather served in World War I. My grandfather followed up from World War II all the way through Vietnam. My dad picked up what did he picked up in 78, 79, and then ran it through, the Gulf, and then I picked up for all of GWAT. So, and hopefully I'm breaking that trend when it comes to my son. No, I grew up, in a warrior family, man. That's just, I know it's a cheesy way to put it, but that's just how my family was, and that's how we all talk. That's how, we all understand each other. And I didn't even really truly fully bond with a lot of them until after, my first deployment or two. And that's when my family dynamic really changed. So more so on the generational side for me. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service and thank you for sharing that, and also your vulnerability that we're going to get into later about, raising your hand and saying, "Hey, I need something here. I need some help." I'm curious if you feel comfortable, like, are there insights that you have from your family about stigmas or care in the military as it's evolved through the years? I mean, people in and out of the military can surmise certain generational things. And then people in and out of law enforcement or other first responders, they have their own perceptions of whether and how first responder services are adapting to this awareness and this need.
Well, my family's probably the worst ones to actually kind of go through that. You know what I mean? But no, I'll insight on this, right? Like they understand the change that you go through. However, in their generational, way of handling things, you don't talk about things, you don't deal with things, you know what I mean? Like they are, that very kind of right-sided men to
Hmm.
where it's like, hey, no, like we don't do this, right? And we don't talk about it, we don't deal with it, that's just kind of how they were. But I will say this one is I've only seen my dad cry one time in my life. Not when his parents passed away, not when, any of these other, kind of losses or tragedies happened throughout their life. But when I was leaving for my first deployment, I saw my dad cry. And that stuck with me for a long time, right? Because keep this in mind, you know what I mean? Like throughout my entire career, my dad asked when I was going to get a real job. So, you know what I mean? Like
Getting
it's
mixed
one of those
signals here,
things.
Dad.
Yeah, right? So, but no, he did. And he knew that where I was going and what I was doing was going to change me forever. And I was not going to come back the same person if I come back at all. And that's truly what was in his mind at that point. Because him and I had talked about it later. But yeah, no, it's my family definitely isn't the talking type. We aren't the emotional type. We aren't those different things. I have only really truly gained that through my mental health journey and my work. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not common. I mean, it's like, or I suppose the talking type of family, especially in these generations we're talking about, and or warrior culture, as you nodded to. And I don't think it sounds cheesy at all. I think that when we frame warrior culture or the terminology, oftentimes, especially today in our loud media society, there's all this hate and discontent. It's like, well, there's a difference between like fighting to fight, and there's difference for fighting what you believe in and protecting those you love, which I don't think anyone would get it twisted that the majority of the people that sign up for this kind of uniform service are trying to protect those they love, whether it's their family or the metaphor of everyone's family out there, or their community, like the greater community. So I'm kind of frustrated sometimes when people like really come after the term warrior versus guardian versus protector. It's like most of us are in it for the same. But let's not get weighed down by word choice. But I do appreciate that insight because I think that speaks to so many people, whether they are first responders or military, but how we navigate these complex emotions. And right, so you have this stoic dad figure that you never saw cry, and I don't know if I ever saw my dad cry now that I'm thinking about it. But when you're going off to deployment, something that he knows well, something that your family lineage knows well, and to see that probably a lot of pride but also a lot of concern and care and worry. And then you even verbalize like, hey, maybe I'll be the last of my lineage, right, to get into the armed services, which I wager is partly in jest, right? Like a lot of honor knowing what you and your buddies have done and put themselves through, and those that came before you and will come after. But there is that concern. It's super common in cops, right? So many cops say like, God forbid my kid becomes a cop. Hopefully a firefighter is generally the notion or the words there. But I do try to call people out in the right settings to be like, you know what? If your kid wants to do what you do, you did something right, So there is that. And I think it's very unlikely for my kid, but I hope I would maintain that awareness that, I balanced something right, or I represented something in a positive way, if that makes enough of a mark on her or those that grow up around me, friends, kids, things like that.
Yeah. No, I definitely, hear you on the kid front, right? Like my son has been telling me since he was a little kid that that's all he's wanted to do is join the military. My youngest can't talk yet. But you know what I mean? Like and I get it, right? Like I raise my boys in that warrior culture as well too. Right? Like we're not the ones to sit inside and not go out and learn new things. Go out and be physical and understand how things work and honestly just how to be good men, right?
Hmm.
Because I think society has a pretty solid mix in that nowadays, and it's being lost. Like the art of being an actual man now is not the same and not there. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to be, fully socially, correct all the times as a man. You don't, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree with people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's okay to, do all those certain things. But as long as you're maintaining your values and respecting others around you, it's amazing what you can get done as a man.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I've said it many times, and I think a lot of why I even came into first responder work was in some ways, it's something you said, kind of a proving ground for you following family lineage. But for me, I think it was iconic. Prove yourself, like prove that you are a legitimate adult that can do legitimate adult manly things. And of course, the majority of the audience will get what we're talking about, which is, again, talk about a word that's been dragged through the mud, masculinity. Okay,
Yeah.
come on. Like, there are so many ways to be a man, a gentleman, and stand up for what you believe in and put it out there, but still be polite and have a code, right? To be kind and have a code. And I think that's what most people will resonate with. And I think that it is a huge cause of the majority of our social ills is the lack of male role modelship and just stepping up, like being a solid figure for those around you, whether you're a dad or not. But certainly when you become a dad, there talk about a code and some requirements. Like there are certain things you ought to do, which is not leave. Like, let's start there.
Right.
But yeah, how many of the individuals that we're dealing with in law enforcement that didn't have that, or they had just like the most corrosive version of that? And so I feel for that. But yeah, for sure, I think like so much of that is foundational in a lot of people that come through. Not saying that everyone had like something that they had to prove, like a chip on their shoulder, but no, they saw something that they wanted to be, whether they had a great example of that or they wanted to create a great example of that.
Well, and I think that's too, right? Like so many people nowadays end up becoming a product of their environment, right? Instead of making their environment a product of them, right? And I get it. Again with the cheesy kind of, satire lines, but
I
it's
love it,
true,
man. I love it.
right? Like it's true. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're gonna sit down there and be like, "Oh, look at me, I'm a disabled veteran and I have a handicap thing and I'm gonna play the woe is me game," right? Where's that gonna get you? No, I got out of the military. You're right. I took a month or two to figure out me, right? My new normal. And then I started a company, right?
That's quick,
That company
actually.
started
That's
booming,
quick.
right? Like, and, I'm not self employed. I'm an actual CEO. I raise capital for a company now. I don't work in it. I don't know how to, do sewing or half the advanced manufacturing that comes along with it. Do I understand the principles and how it's done? Absolutely. I wrote the operations process for it. But, you know what I mean? Like, taking what you know and what you learn and bring that to your environment and make it a product of you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Stop being sad and acting like a victim all the time. You're not.
Yeah.
The
I'm
only
like
person that can change
99%.
your life is you.
I
That's
think
it.
we talked about that a lot, right? When I popped on
Yep.
your show. And Mark is talk about your company a little bit, just so people are
Yeah.
like sewing. I'm intrigued. They're leaning in.
Yeah,
They're like trying to
sewing,
look you up while
right?
they're
Now,
driving.
see, I know we manufacture tactical equipment, and it's actually called an OEM. So it's the original equipment manufacturer. And understanding a little bit about that, right, is most companies nowadays don't manufacture their own equipment here in the United States, right? It's not a thing. They just don't do it. There are actually only like 3 or 4, I think there's 5 now, actual like tactical nylon OEMs in the United States, right? Majority of other companies out there, right? And I'm not going to be rude and name drop companies, right? And be
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
you guys don't, make your own stuff. But in that space, they don't. Most people are like, oh, this is made by so and so does this. It's not. It's made by Rain. You know what I mean? Who is an OEM manufacturer, and they make majority of the carrier systems here in the United States because they are a true OEM. So understanding a little bit about like advanced manufacturing and doing that is kind of important when you talk about the space. But yeah, we are an OEM. We take everything from complete raw material that is all Berry compliant material, meaning that it is made completely here in the United States. It is not material that's brought from overseas. It's not, anything that, oh, they brought it here, but it's still manufactured elsewhere. It's not. The mills here are actually fully done here in the United States, and that's important in the tactical space, which a lot of people don't understand as well too. A lot of products, especially when they're coming out of like the China, the Malaysia, India, other places like that when it comes to textile manufacturing, is they're soaked in dyes and tied, right? And they do that for a couple purposes, just to prep the materials out, but also when it's seen under night vision, it lights up like a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
You can never get rid of it because it's soaked in the raw material before it's woven. So there's a reason why there's Barry compliance out there. So that way it falls under that realm. But yeah, we operate a Barry compliant manufacturing facility. We do carrier systems. We do a lot of different accessories. We have a gun belt line coming out here shortly. That's going to be a little bit different than most of y'all have ever seen. Any of you guys have ever carried, 40 millimeter, whether it's, riot or HE or HEDPs or smokes or whatever, it's one of the worst things to carry. I've got a solution coming for y'all.
Yeah, my guys
Right?
had this goofy vest on the riot team, like this
Mhm.
super saggy and yeah, just flopping all over the place, getting caught on everything.
I have a very cool product about to drop. It's sitting right there. I want to show it to you so badly, but we are still waiting on a patent, so I
We
will
shall
hold off
wait.
on that.
Yes. Yeah, we don't
Yes,
want Blue
wait,
Grit
but
to
it
be
is coming
the
out.
reason why.
Right? Like, but it's coming out and it'll be interchangeable for our vests as well as our gun belts. Right. So you guys
Nice.
have a couple different options. We also kind of tie pretty heavily into the fitness community, right? Because if you're doing anything in the tactical space, physical fitness is always your priority, right? So we have that. You can actually wear our carriers without a shirt. And a little
We
fun
were talking
fact, you
about
get
that
to keep your
before.
nipples. All right.
Yeah.
That's important to me. So, we're out there and we could do that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that we're incorporating. Also, actually about to incorporate a new process in it as well too. That'll have some additional kind of like wellness and healing properties coming into it as well. So
Nice.
yeah, check it out. Grey Group's gonna have a lot of stuff coming out. It'll be pretty wild.
Yeah. That's exciting. I appreciate that detour. I'm sure a lot of people are like, wait, what are we talking about? And then equal amount is probably like, tell me more, right? And so
Right?
yeah, if you want to be a bro, work out with your carrier and no shirt on, then there is something for you too. Which, yeah, who doesn't appreciate that as far as the chafage elimination? Now, pivoting back, I love that we talked about that because it shows the level of growth and what you've been able to do. I mean, I can only know my story and try to contextualize some other people's, but I was raised with an expectation and all these things to go down this path of like doctor, lawyer, like anyone knows the stereotype, right? Master's was like a requisite, PhD or doctor was like proud parents. I haven't done any of that yet, so sorry, but I know that I've made her proud in other ways with what I've been able to do in this space. However, I can only imagine what it's like to be like the fourth generation anything, so I don't even know that part. And then take that and then flipping the script and recognizing and accepting help and then taking a break, which you said a couple months, which I think is astronomically short for any significant transition, right? Like, let's just take any cop or service personnel that's going to be absent of medical retirement, anything, physical, mental retirement, anything. Just saying like, yeah, I'm just have my time and I'm going to take a break. I got to figure out the next thing. This is not serving me in the way I want it to. 2 months is crazy short. So to even have that and start your own company and now be a CEO and you're growing all these things and all these products that a lot of listeners will be super stoked about. And otherwise, people that aren't super stoked about that space are like, I mean, he's talking about a lot of stuff that sounds very impressive. He knows what he's talking about. Clearly success. Man, like I want to dive into that recognition and you getting the help and accepting the help and doing the work, because that's a lot of what this conversation is about. And again, just to recap, absent a physical or mental disability, disabling, retiring factor, that's a lot, man. So hats off to you. Can you please share a little bit about your insight there?
Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of start at the beginning of it, right? Where I raised my hand. Truthfully, I didn't want to, right? And we can kind of dabble into that space as well too, right? So anybody knows that works in our professions that if you go under and raise your hand for mental health, there's a potential you could lose your career. We're attempting to break that stigma. All right. And, but there's still a lot of work to do in those organizational senses, right? But understanding the kind of balancing act of it, of where, hey, is this going to do more detriment to me personally if I continue doing this work, right? Compared to this is who I am and what I've done my entire life and career. So I guess the hard identity crisis for me after raising my hand and then losing that is, who am I now, right? Who am I without the military? Who am I, with those things? I guess the major benefit for me is I like to look at things of, what am I doing today, not what have I done before, right? Every day in the military to me was a competition, right? Like if you weren't showing up and you weren't competing for your job and fighting for your job and doing those things every day, then you are way behind me already. So you're not like, I won't even talk to you about it, right? Like, and that's just how, especially in the certain communities in the military that I was in, that's what the expectation was. So I guess I took that and transitioned that with me, right? We take our good and our bad, and we do all the different things, but that was one of the good that did come with me. And yeah, I took that time. I did. I sat on old Fort couch for a while. I did a lot of drawing, and I had this really great idea that I was going to just paint motorcycles and hang out the rest of my life.
Dude, that doesn't sound like a bad life at all.
It doesn't, man. It doesn't. And that's where I was at. Like, anybody who knows me knows I'm a very large Harley enthusiast, and I love to paint. I love to paint bikes. I painted a couple folks' bikes, and everything's come out well, and it's looking good. But it's my artsy side.
Yeah.
And I still do it on the side and in kind of my free time when I have some, which isn't
Sure,
very
that's
much
not
lately.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not very much lately. But no, you got to find what you enjoy though, and take that time to realize who you are. Right. For me, it didn't take as long. For some people, it does. But if you sit and you dwell in that for too long and don't have action, you're going to get stuck. Right. And you're going to be stuck in that space to where you can't transition. You fall into that victim mentality. Right. You're not a victim. You're a warrior. Stop thinking about it. Start making action and do something.
Yeah.
Nobody respects an idea. Everybody respects a product. Right? It's the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I took that and I started rowing. You know what I mean? Like I do things very differently, and I will give this to the veteran community. We are very different. We think very different. I can't speak to the first responder community. I'm not a first responder. I don't know. A lot of my family is though. So we are
You
very
probably
similar in that
have a
sense.
good angle on it. Yeah.
I have some knowledge base there, but me personally, I'm not. But we're all kind of cut from the same cloth when it comes to that. So no, I stood up the company. Now we had a baseline product. We had all those different things, like we had our MVPs and all that stuff. But we went from essentially just having our baseline products to having a full manufacturing facility in about 45.
Wow.
Nope, my dog's coming to say hello.
This is a dog-friendly podcast.
Yes,
Unless
this
it's
is a
my
dog-friendly
dogs and
podcast.
they bust the door open and start tearing up around here. That's the only
Yeah,
time
mine
I
does
get
too.
judgy. But your dog, totally fine. What kind of dog is it? I can't see.
He's Adobe. Look.
Oh, nice.
Come here. Come on, you want to say hi? You want to be famous? Here you go. Come on.
What's his name?
He's like, no, I'm not supposed to get up. Come on, it's okay.
Well trained. I see it.
No, you're not going to come up.
No worries. No worries. Welcome, pup. This is a dog-friendly place. No, that's fantastic. That growth, I hear a lot of things, and you're absolutely right. Like, anyone can have an idea, and sometimes a lot of kind of just negative, toxic people have tons of ideas. So, like, what are you going to do about it? Like, the world works with action, not ideas, right? Oh, there he is.
Yep.
So I love that, and I love that recognition that, yeah, it's not about the past. It's what do we do here in the present? Like, our past can absolutely contribute towards our situation now, right? Like, there's good, bad, ugly, but what do you want to do with that? And then where are you at now? Like, what is relevant now? What helped you focus on that? Because I feel like enough people could glean and learn from that alone, whether they had a bad week or a bad decade.
Man, I guess it just kind of boiled down to doing it, right? Like, and I don't have some great insight on how I did it. I wish I did. I could probably write a book. But I'm just kidding. I'm not a Navy SEAL. Yeah, right? No, shots fired. It's fine. No, man, it's I don't really have a great insight, man. I saw the project in front of me and I'm like, okay, this is the idea. And instead of just sitting on it and planning, I acted towards it. Right? I said, okay, this is what we need to get this started. Here's what we're gonna do. And we went and we did it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's action. It's action based.
Mm-hmm.
Don't talk about it, be about it. Just do it.
I love it, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if down the line, maybe more thoughts and reflections or people asking you or kind of picking your brain, it comes out. There's been some things that I didn't know after my shooting. I've had a lot of people through the years ask me like why I think I handled it in a positive way and why I came out of it so grateful. And in hindsight now, the last couple of years doing this project, I recognized there was a reason. It wasn't just, I don't know, just because I guess I was lucky. It was like I had a lot of good support systems. I had good, physical fitness regimen that I really leaned on. I had extremely, extremely strong bonds, friendships, my girlfriend, now wife, my family, like my colleagues at work, like all those things contributed to me coming out and being like, life's grand. Like I was literally like rainbows and butterflies and like a second lease on life. And I know that's not that for everyone, and it's not to place judgment. It's just for me, that's what I recognize made for that I suppose, equation, how it worked out. Now I wanna keep on the mental health awareness and your experience and what that evoked in you, and what is QRF UP and why that called to you, why that mission is it had you take on this, like a CEO. I can only imagine is more than a full-time job. Working for yourself is a full-time job more than, and then working that nonprofit life, which we talked a lot about before we started recording. But yeah, take it away.
So QRFUP, right? Just so everybody's aware, QRFUP is a mobile application that is designed for veterans, active duty first responders, and their families. It is a red hot button that you sit there and push and hold, and it directly connects you with a live therapist. It isn't a call waiting type thing. You are directly connected. With that too, if you're able to de-escalate, your crisis on the phone call, we put you into a safety plan, right? You get put on a timer, you call back to verify your safety plan. Everything's good. If that's not capable, we actually have responders, which are peer-to-peer support specialists that come through and will actually physically show up to your location and help you de-escalate in person or escort you to a higher level of care. Guys, QRFUP is going to be huge. It is rewriting how we are dealing with the immediate crisis across the nation. So when I came to QRFUP, I originally was doing it for my company, right? One of my affiliate marketers actually hit me up and was like, Mark, you talk about this stuff all the time, right? Like, you should really look into this organization. So I'm like, well, set me up with a meeting with him and we'll see what's going on. So I did my due diligence and checked him out and looked at some of that stuff. And then, yeah, we had the meeting and I'm like, hey, I want to put on a range day fundraiser for the organization and help raise funds for it. I think it's great. I ended up on the board of directors after that meeting.
That
And then
escalated quickly.
it very quickly. And then, gosh, about a few months later, I ended up as the vice president on the board of directors for the organization. So, the organization is founded around the right principles, right? And you and I talked to this, at lengths, kind of offline and different things as well too. But if you're going to do something, it's got to be for the right reasons.
Hmm.
And, my reason, right? I can't speak for everybody else. I can tell you their stories, but at the end of the day, it's not my place to say. But my reason is I'm tired of my friends killing themselves, right? I just buried number 40, right? And I take a moment to pause with that and let that seep in. My number 40 was Kyle Martin, and he was a retired Sergeant First Class Army Ranger, and he took his life, a few months ago. And we just went through it all again.
Hmm.
And I'm so sick of getting these phone calls. And unfortunately, I've grown numb to it because I've received so many. And I don't like that. You know what I mean? I'm so tired of it because there's so much more out there to do and to look at. But I also understand the dilemma when it comes to it, right? And I've talked about this on a couple other shows, but understanding that when you have PTSD and you have TB and you've lived outside of the social normality that's here in the United States, right? And you understand what that truly is and what the value of life is outside of this country, right? You begin to view things very differently. And when you have blocked components in your neural pathways, right, because you block out certain pieces of things, you stop functioning the right way and you begin to see things very differently. You begin to see them very black and white over seeing them in the gray. Case in point, my company, Gray Group, right? Because if we're not viewing things from the gray, you can't actually get anything done to fix it. And that's the way that I live my life. That's the way that I built my company. And that's the way we're building QRFUP, is understanding that not everything is cookie cutter and it's not a check the block service. And I want y'all to understand too, right? And let me dive into this a little bit. I know I'm getting long-winded, but there's less than 1% of the United States is comprised of veterans and first responders, but yet they make up 33% of the national suicide rate, right? And I get it. Everybody hears me say it over and over and over again, but I keep repeating myself because nobody's listening. It's a problem. Stop raising awareness to the problem. Start acting on it. Start fixing the problem. We are warriors. We're the warrior class. Men and women, it does not matter. Fix the problems, get ahead of it, and then we can stop getting these calls. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. There's a lot of power there, and I appreciate you sharing about your losses and your direct community, all these folks that you knew, and we need to make sure that the losses that we have in our shared communities are not in vain, right? We need to put that into action as something that Mark's talking to us about. And I can share a couple spin-off insights, which is that with an app like this, where you have as the button as you describe it, I think those of us that have been in one of these communities for long enough knows that we've, whether or not ourselves or someone really close to us has had some really hard time, and it may or may not be. Yeah, there's the visual. So for those listening in, it's just like he just held up his phone with a red ring, and simply you just push that. But on a lighter version, we all know times when we felt overwhelmed and just didn't know what to do, who to call. I've had people directly tell me that they've tried different 24/7 hotlines, and usually this was way after the fact that they even shared this, which was, it's hard to work through that too, but different organizations where they did not get in touch with somebody, right? And sometimes that's not even a mental health professional. Sometimes it's a very well-meaning peer support type of volunteer. But we talked about credibility before the show started, before the recording started, but like, how damaging is it to that person that is already dealing with stigmas, is already dealing with like, man, it's something wrong with me. Shoot, I've heard this organization said however many times. Now I'm going to, okay, I'll make the call. I can Google it, or I remember the number, and then not talk to somebody in that time when it took so much courage and fortitude to even make that jump, and how disheartening that must feel if they even recognize how much that feels for that reason, in addition to everything they're going through, right? So there's that. And you talk about numbness, and I'll just offer a different version that I think could help engage some people listening in. But I've felt this about specific individuals I've worked around, where I'm like, man, I've verbalized it to some close people, and then I've also just thought it, and it kind of had some angst, I suppose, that I was sitting in, where from a distance, some people that I've tried to reach out to, check in on, I've had these thoughts, and I've told my wife at these times where in years past, I'm like, if something happened to this person, if this person harmed themselves or tried, I would not be surprised. And how crappy that felt to verbalize that, but then not be driving over to their house. Cause I'm like, I can only do what I can do. And I also have to run my life, and I have to do these things. And they're not even close. Like they're not accepting what I'm trying to even nudge or put out. Again, tying it back to an app like this, where again, like maybe rest assured a little bit more that if someone has an app like that, and then if they find themselves in that moment and they're like, okay, I have this, let's give it a shot.
So, yeah, man. So first and foremost, right, I can talk about the app a little bit on an operational sense, so everybody kind of understands how that works, right? So we are rolling this out nationwide here in May 26th. We are live to go nationwide, right? And now that's on the app side. However, we're doing a state-by-state launch, because I will not say that this is operational in your state if we have not met our minimum manning requirement, right? So our minimum manning is 9 therapists and 109 responders per state. Now, obviously, this is based around like geographical location, because our responder notification goes out within 100 miles of the person in crisis who somebody can respond to. So Texas, Connecticut, right? Common sense plays a factor. But the median is 109 responders. So as we're doing this and we're launching state by state, we are doing a state by state recruiting effort, right? And that is recruiting our therapists and our responders. These are both volunteer positions. We are hiring on full-time therapists, but we're still looking at other programs and other things to help supplement that, right? Because 40 therapists, $120,000 a year, is $4.8 million. All right. So when some of these nonprofits are like, my operating cost is $30 million a year. Well, yeah, it is if you want to actually do something, right? And this goes back to my angst and frustration with a lot of these organizations who are accepting grants and accepting money and doing those things, but they're solely raising awareness. And we put a retreat on twice a year. Cool, man. Like you're not stopping the problem though, right? Let's funnel the money to where it really needs to go and get it in front of the right people. So, but yeah, that's really kind of where it boils down. So as we launch each state, that means we've hit our minimum manning requirements, and we can do that, and we can provide the service that we say we can. All right. I'm not going to say that, one of these states is live if it's not, because the absolute last thing I want is when somebody does reach out and they don't get what they need to get help.
Yeah.
Because not only will it destroy the organization, right? But more importantly, that person's not getting the help they need. Right. And that's the issue with so many other organizations, right? Take 988, for instance. 988 is a good organization. it was done for the right reasons, right? Kristen Christie, their founder, she's an amazing woman. She has an amazing story, and she's done it for the right reasons. And let's, cross our fingers here, but she's actually going to be our guest speaker at our gala.
Oh, wow.
So, we're very excited about that, right? And we're licensed under 988. However, you know what I mean? Like, they're receiving almost 450 million calls. Excuse me, 450,000, not million, 450,000 calls a month, right? And they're dropping calls because they are so overloaded. This is where QRFUP comes into play, though, right? We have kind of niched that demographic to where 988, they take everyone. They
Mhm.
do, right? We are niche to the veteran, active military, and first responder community. So, our population is dramatically less, right? However, still keep in mind, we're servicing close to 40 million people right across the nation. It's still a dramatic amount of people.
Yeah.
But with that, we can kind of niche that and find a better balance.
Yeah.
And it's going to be big. And eventually, hopefully, we can open the app up for other things and, do more with it and in subsidiary products. But, right now, this is all we're capable of doing because getting each of these states open is no easy task. So please, if anybody does hear this, you want to get involved, you want to become a responder, you want to, pick up some hours as a therapist, as a volunteer, or know any other of the college programs that have their, PhD or MSW programs that are looking for clinic hours, we need help. So, because each state's laws are different, everybody has a different take
Mhm.
to it, everybody has different criteria, that's a big push. So, and then furthermore, for everybody else to understand a little more about the app too, we are fully HIPAA compliant, as well as we are integrating ID.me and My Healthy Vet to it. We don't have an integration for first responders or law enforcement yet. We're working on that, but we are integrating those two this year. And then as this kind of rolls out too, just understand that we are not taking any money or grants or donations that require us to report to a department or report to, the DoD or report to, anything along those lines, strictly because we want this to remain as anonymous as possible, right? If you don't want law enforcement showing up to your door, we have a toggle button for that, right? If you're, need to do an anonymous call and you can't have people show up or you don't want people to know, it's there to do that because we have to take away the stigma before we can
Mhm.
fully break it.
Yeah. I appreciate you hitting on all those notes that you just did, right? So I think that a lot of our communities would be very wary, like, okay, I love the idea. However, I'm not ready for that, right? What about this? And so thank you for covering those for sure. Assuage, I believe is the right word, a lot of those concerns. At the same time, like a lot of what you said makes a lot of sense, like niching down, right? Because we talk about a lot with peer support. We talk about a lot with mental health treatment, with therapy, counseling, about cultural competency, right? And so when you have people that are signing up to be a part of this, whether or not they have the certification, I would even say that the fact that people are signing up to volunteer in this effort they've honed their brain and they're focusing their intention around this type of specificity, right? Whether you're a call volunteer or you're responding or you are a mental health professional, different than like if I go to psychologytoday.com and I try to not shaming on any of that, like support is support. But if that is my route, one, can I even get somebody in my area that's in network? And two, will they have any idea what I'm talking about or around, right? Am I going to feel worse, which is a common thing a lot of people have shared on that personally when they're trying to talk about first responder, military type of trauma that they've experienced, and the caregiver has no context and they're at an impasse. They feel terrible. They actually might be scarred a bit from hearing what they're hearing, but then also the caller, the person that needs the help, is lost because they're like, well, I actually feel worse than where we started, right? So
Right.
again, not disparaging anyone, but just speaking to the specificity of care and focus and mission, which makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And that's really why we niched it to that, obviously, because that's where, our community is and where that all personalized for us. But, the other side of it is, right, we want our brothers and sisters showing up for us, right? It's, let's say, for instance, Eric, you're in a bad way and you hit the button. It's me showing up for you, right? And be like, hey, brother, like, I'm not a cop, man. I don't know how all that works, but I understand the premise, right?
Mhm.
I get it. And Tell me more about it, right? And we walk through that, and we help de-escalate those things. So it's for the right reasons, and it's to have brothers and sisters show up for one another. And just so everybody's clear too, we do offer certification in order to be a peer-to-peer support specialist under us because of licensing and insurance reasons. Obviously, we do offer, it is a 12-hour course through PsychArmor, which is ran by Columbia University. For training, it is an online training that you can go through, and then we also have a couple other partnerships that offer additional training that'll be ran bi-monthly or quarterly as we continue to roll this out for more responders to get additional training if they want it.
Nice. Nice. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for covering not only your story and a bit of context there, but so much about this issue and what people can actually do about it, what we as communities can do about it. QRFUP. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with? And please do remind people where they can find you, your company, and QRFUP.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, like at the end of the day, mental health and, veteran and first responder suicide is a huge problem in our country, right? And we like to talk about the 22 a day numbers. That was a marketing campaign from 2012. They're really in the 30s and 40 range per day of members committing suicide. All right, we have got to do something about it, and it takes action, not awareness. Okay, we all know the problem's there. Let's do something about it. If you guys are interested in becoming a volunteer, donating, or just supporting in any other way, shapes, or form, we have events coming up, all sorts of other stuff. You can find QRFUP at www.qrfup.org or any of our social platforms. It's at qrfup.organization. If you're looking to connect with my company, it's www.graygrouptactical.com, or you can find us at Gray Group Tactical. You can find me at, oh gosh, they change this on me all the time. I suck at social media and get shadow banned a lot. So I have somebody else who helps me with this.
So controversial.
It is, it's Gray6_actual is on there, or at the Gray Zone podcast for some other stuff that we're putting out, running the QRFUP campaign, as well as other kind of veteran entrepreneurial campaigns as well.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Mark. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, brother.
Hey, Grit Nation. I got a couple things I'm really excited to share with you. The first is that the free newsletter, is now live. All you got to do is go to bluegritwellness.com to subscribe. It is basically a summary of everything good and gritty for the week, including some exclusive content specifically on the newsletter. That'll include wellness information, nutrition, things that you ask, Q&A, as well as updates about Blue Grit, offerings, news, things that'll help you out. Next order of business. For years, I've been asked what kind of nutritional supplements I use because I've been into learning about health, nutrition, fitness for so long. And for years, I landed on NutriCost. And it's only a recent thing that I've been an affiliate, but now I get to pass the savings on to you. So if you go to NutriCost.com, use code BLUEGRIT, that's just BLUEGRIT, you get 10% off. Literally just a couple items, you get free shipping. And the reason why I found it was because it was always the best quality for the best value. So I always recommend people look at the ingredient list, look out for things like sucralose. It has the lowest amount of unnatural ingredients if you're looking for that kind of thing, whether it's your whey protein isolate, which I toggle on and off of, or organic vegan protein to cut down on different chemicals that I just generally like to avoid. It's not just protein, it's creatine and minerals, vitamins, things like L-theanine and magnesium, which I use regularly to help my nervous system power down. It aids rest and recovery, promoting better sleep. So whatever it is, go to NutriCost.com and you can just enter the code BLUEGRIT to get your 10% off. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.